Hi, I'm William Tenholder, and I've been playing for hundreds of years. Well, I'm joking, of course. It feels that way sometimes. So many games, thousands of games won around the world, and this is a very, very instructive game, and I'm going to take you through it fairly quickly, because really where the lessons are learned all throughout right to the end game. So there's a lot to take in here, you know. I like to take the new two knights out and just see what they're going to do. So, it's very passive on both sides. It's a very counter-puncher type game, right? Okay, so I was thinking fianchetto. Okay, and they were thinking fianchetto. So let's see what happens here. So, both doing pretty passive. Notice the two lines in the middle, the four line, fifth line, are totally unoccupied. So it's a very interesting counter puncher type. So they fianchetto right away, and I just decided to block it. That was the whole point of my moves. And so black has a good position. They've got four pawns lined up. It's interesting. There's the pro move, of course. Get the rook in so you can start to get a queenside attack on. And so they did an interesting move attacking my bishop. Of course, I have to take, because if they take my bishop, king takes bishop, then you can't castle. So take the bishop. Smart move on their part. It gives them development. So far, pretty smart game, I thought. Very smart. Obviously, as you've seen in my previous games, I've talked about deactivating pieces. Well, obviously, I've deactivated the knight. The knight has nowhere to go. It's stuck on the side. So, that's part of the game plan, right? And so now I get to castle, thanks to getting rid of that bishop. And so we're going to go through this as quickly as I can. It's all further development moves. It's interesting, the two knights. I don't see that too often. But yeah, the two knights are racked up there. And I've got the two rooks. So let's go through. Okay. So again, developing plans of attack. I bring in the knight just to see. Yeah, so the bishop takes the knight. And so it's developing along nicely. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Of course, a pawn takes, they castle. Now they have, obviously, the white squares around the king are weak. So this is what I want to exploit. I move up the pawn so I can get in there with my bishop. Okay, so here we go. Bishop gets in, and then of course the rook has to move. And now, of course, there is a possible checkmate if the queen could ever get to f3 quick enough. You've got a checkmate. So there we go. Queen's trying to get to f3, right? And it'd be unstoppable checkmate. Now what do? Brilliant, right? They just move their knight, protect f3 with the queen. So that was a great move, really. So now I've got other counterattacking measures. It's going to be bishop attack the queen. Queen ducks in, and now we pin the queen. Just beautiful. We need to obviously move the knight out of harm's way, but here, this perfect pin on the queen, right? The queen has nowhere to move. And so we have to take advantage of that. King moves to get some space and protect its position, protect against all the threats and mates. And so we start a queenside attack with the A pawn. And so it progresses pretty nicely. Nice control in the center, control of all the pieces really. And so now it's just breaking it open, right? So this is what we see here, just breaking open that D file. And now the rooks have an attack, right? Open D file with the D rook, black rook. And so with the two knights, they're two very good guards. So how do we break that open? Let's look at some of the moves here to break this open, right? Okay, so now we got the two rooks lined up. And, this is the beginning of the end, really, for white. Once those two rooks are piled up like that, but they do have some opportunities. Um, they do have the ability to block. However, knight takes knight, pawn takes, rook takes, and now we really have control of the d file. And this is the way you win games, right? Now you have to pay attention to that rook on B. So, you have to be thinking also about your king. And it is advisable to be thinking about pawn to h6, right? Because then there can't be an attack on the king. So, excuse me, it is okay to bring that rook in and take control of the second rank. And they make some moves with the knight to protect against the attack. However, they did have, excuse me, they did have a fork coming. And so a pawn moves up to avoid the fork on the rook and the pawn, right? So now that does two things. By moving the pawn to a4, it disables the knight. Knight has nowhere to go. So they don't have many choices here. So let's just see what they can do about this. We've got attacks going. Finally, we can get two rooks out there on the second rank. And so this is the way it goes. Now, this is where you need to think about h6. You got to put your pawn to h6 to get your king out of check so that your second rook can move in. So, for example, you don't want to do that because now the rook can come in with check. And now you can see if you had your pawn on h6, king can simply duck. So don't do that, because if you do that, then you end up with this mess, right? Check, 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 all of that nonsense goes on. It's basically a draw, then takes, and it's just losing a winning position. So instead of going through all of that, right, before you move your rook up, move your h-pawn up to h6. Okay? So this is the main thing I wanted to illustrate. After you've moved your pawn up, then no problem. No problem. Yeah, then you can go for the checkmate, right? Because your king can duck, and there's nothing they can do about it, right? So I hope you enjoyed this. This was an illustration of, the proper sequence. The proper sequence, of course, was pawn to h6. Then, after that, You can go rook, and you have a great chance of a checkmate. Um, is totally winning position. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned something. I certainly did, and yeah, it's a fun game. Enjoy your chess. Have a good night.